The Tatriya Samhita, the Atriya Brahmana, speak of the cow's walk as being held by the cows. Was it really a session of these animals, or was it something else? The Aitareya Brahmana, as we've seen, throws out a suggestion that the cows are the Adityas, or the month gods, and the cow's session is really the session of the monthly sun gods. Comparative mythology now fully bears out the truth of this remarkable suggestion put forward by the Brahmana. Cows, such as we might meet them in the mythological legends, represent days and nights of the year, not only in Vedic, but also Greek mythology. And we can, therefore, now give better account of the origin of this sacrificial session than it was a session of bovine animals for the purpose of obtaining horns. In speaking of cows in Aryan mythology, Professor Max Mueller writes as follows: "There were thus three kinds of cows, the real cows, the cows in the dark cloud, rain being the milk, and the cows stepping forth from the dark stable of the night, the rays of the morning. These three are not always easily distinguished in the Vedas. Nay, while we naturally try to distinguish between them, the poets themselves seem to delight in mixing them up." The passage quoted above, we saw how the captive waters were compared to cows that had been stolen by Pani, but what was once compared in the Veda is soon identified. As to the dawn, she was not only compared to a cow, but is called a cow straight out. Thus, when we read in the Rig-Veda, "The dawns have made light on the eastern half of the sky, they brighten their splendor. The bright cows approach, the mothers. The cows can only be the dawns themselves," the plural of dawn being constantly in the Vedas used where we should use a singular. We can read that Agni Shamau deprived Pani of his cows and found light for many. Here again, the cows were the dawns kept by Pani in the dark stable or cave of the night, discovered by Sarame and delivered every morning by the gods of light. We read in Rig-Veda that Brihaspati split the rock and found the cows. Of Indra, it is said that he produced the sun and found the cows. Of Brihaspati, that he drove out the cows, that he split the cave by his word, that he hid in darkness and lighted up the sky. What can be clearer? The Maruts also are said to uncover the cows, and Agni is praised for killing the fiends, for having overcome the darkness by light, and having found the cows, water, and sun. In all these passages we find no iva or na, which would indicate that the word cow was used metaphorically. The dawns or days as they proceed from the dark stable, or are rescued from evil spirits, are spoken of directly as the cows. If they are spoken of in the plural, we find the name, in the case of the dawn, Ushas, who is often conceived of as many at the approach of the dawns with their cows. From that, it required but a small step to speak of the one dawn as the mother of the cows. Kuhn thought that these cows should be understood as the red clouds of the morning, but clouds are not always present at sunrise, nor can it well be said that they are carried off or kept in prison during the night by the powers of darkness. But what is important, and settles the point, is the fact that these cows or oxen of the dawn or of the rising sun occur in other mythologies also, and are there clearly meant for days. They are numbered as 12 by 30, that is, 30 days of the 12 lunar months. If Helios has 350 oxen and 350 sheep, that can only refer to the days and to the nights of the year, and would prove the knowledge of a year of 350 days before the Aryan separation. Thus, the cows in mythology are the days and nights, or dawns, that are imprisoned by Pani, and not real living cows with horns. Adopting this explanation and substituting these metaphorical cows for Gave in Gaveam Eyanam, it is not difficult to see that underneath the strange stories of cows holding a sacrificial session for getting horns, there lies concealed remarkable phenomenon that, released from the kachas of Pani, these cows of days and nights walked on for 10 months. The oldest duration of the session, known as the cow's walk. In plain language, this means, if it means anything, that the oldest Aryan year was one of 10 months, followed by a long night, during which the cows were again carried away by the powers of darkness. We have seen the oldest Roman year was of 10 months, and the Avestas, which will be shown later on, also speaks of 10 months summer prevailing in the Aryana Valleo, before the home was invaded by evil spirits, who brought on ice and severe winter in that place. A year of 10 months with a long night of 2 months may thus be taken to be known before the ancient separation. References to it in Vedic literature are neither isolated nor imaginary. They are the relics of ancient history, and have been faithfully preserved in the sacrificial literature of India. And if they were hitherto misunderstood, it was because the true key required for their solution was not yet known. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. As noted previously, a year in the circumpolar region will always have a varying number of months, or sunshine, according to latitude. Although, therefore, there is sufficient evidence to establish the existence of a year of 10 months, we cannot hold that it was the only year known in ancient times. In fact, we have seen the legend of Aditi indicates the existence of 7 months of sunshine, and a band of 30 continuous dawns supports the same conclusion. But it seems that a year of 10 months of sunshine was more prevalent, or was selected as the mean of the different varying years. The former view is rendered probable by the fact that of the Angiras of various forms, the Navagvas and the Dashagvas are said to be principal, or the most important. But whichever view we adopt, the existence of a year of 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11 months of sunshine follows as a matter of course, if the ancient home was within the Arctic Circle. Professor Max Mueller, in his passage quoted earlier, points out that the Old Greek year probably consisted of 350 days, and the 350 oxen of Helios represented these days, the 350 sheep representing the nights. He also notices that in German mythology, 700 gold rings of Wieland, the smith, are spoken of, comparing the number to 720 sons of Agni. He draws from it the conclusion that a year of 350 days is also represented in German mythology. This year is shorter by 10 days than the civil year of 360 days, or falls short of a full solar year by 15 days. It is therefore clear that if a year of 350 days existed before the Aryan separation, it must have been followed by a continuous night of 10 days, while, where the year was of 300 days, the long night extended over 60 days of 24 hours each. We shall thus have different kinds of long nights, and it is necessary to see if we can collect evidence to indicate the longest duration of the night known before the Aryan separation. Speaking of the cows or oxen of Helios, as stated in the passage quoted above, Professor Max Mueller goes on to observe, "The cows or oxen of Helios thus received their background from the Vedas. What is told of them by Homer is by no means clear. when it is said that the companions of Odysseus consumed the oxen of Helios, and that they thus forfeited their return home, we can hardly take this in the modern sense of consuming or wasting their days, though it may be difficult to assign any other definite meaning to it. Equally puzzling is the fable alluded to in the Homeric hymn, that Hermes stole the oxen of Apollon and killed 2 of them. The number of Apollon's oxen is given as 50. Others give the number as 100 cows, 12 oxen and 1 bull, which looks like the number of the weeks in the lunar year. But why Hermes should be represented as carrying off the whole herd and then killing 2 is difficult to guess, unless refer to it as the 2 additional months of the cycle of 4 years. In the light of the Arctic theory, the puzzle here referred to is solved without any difficulty. The stealing away or carrying off of the cows need not now be taken to mean simply wasting of the days in the modern sense of the word, nor need we attribute such stories to the fancy of the ancient bards and storytellers. The legend or the tradition of stealing, consuming, or carrying off the cows or oxen is but another form of stating that so many days were lost, being swallowed up by the long night that occurred at the end of the year and lasted, according to latitude, for varying periods of time. So long as everything was to be explained on the theory of a daily struggle between light and darkness, these legends were unintelligible. But as soon as we adopt the Arctic theory, the whole difficulty vanishes, and what was confused and puzzling before becomes at once plain and comprehensible. In the Vedic mythology, cows are similarly said to be stolen by Vritra or Vala, but their number is nowhere given, unless we regard the story by Rig-Veda, the red horse, slaughtering 100 or 101 sheep and giving them to a she-wolf to devour, as a modification of the story of stealing the cows. The Vedic sacrificial literature does, however, preserve for us an important relic, beside the one noted previously. A relic of the older calendar, and especially of the long night. But in this case, the relic is so deeply buried under the weight of latter explanations, adaptations, and emendations, that we must here examine at some length the history of the Soma-sacrifices, in order to discover the original meaning of the rites, which are included under that general name. That the Soma-sacrifice was an ancient institution is amply proved by parallel rites in Parsi scriptures, and whatever doubt we may have had regarding the knowledge of Soma in Indo-European period, as the word is not found in European languages, the system of sacrifices can be clearly traced back to a primeval age. Of this sacrificial system, the Soma sacrifice may, at any rate, be safely taken as the oldest representative, since it forms the main feature of the ritual of the Rig-Veda, and the whole mandala of 114 hymns in the Rig-Veda is dedicated to the praise of Soma. Careful analysis of the Soma sacrifice may therefore be expected to disclose, at least partially, the nature of the oldest sacrificial system of the ancient race, and we shall therefore proceed to examine the same. Chief characteristic of the Soma sacrifice, as distinguished from other sacrifices, is, as the name indicates, the extraction of the Soma juice and the offering thereof to the gods before drinking it. There are 3 libations of Soma in a day, 1 in the morning, 1 midday, the last in the evening, and all these are accompanied by chanting of hymns during the sacrifice. These Soma sacrifices, if classed according to their duration, fall under 3 headings. 1. Those performed in a single day. 2. Those performed in more than 1 and less than 13 days. And 3. Those that take 13 or more than 13 days and may even last for 1,000 years. Under the first head, we have the Agnishtoma, fully described in the Atriya Brahma, as the key or the type of all the sacrifices that fall under this class. There are 6 modifications of Agnishtoma as shown. The last, together with Agnishtoma, form the 7 parts, kinds or modification of the Jatistoma sacrifice. The modifications chiefly consist of the number of hymns to be recited at the libation, or the manner of recitation, or the number of Soma cups used on the occasion. But with these we are not at present concerned. Of the second class of Soma-sacrifice, the 12 days sacrifice, is celebrated both as Ahîna and Satra, and is considered to be very important. This is made up of 3 trayas, or 3-day performances, and are called respectively Jatis, the 10th day, and the 2 Atiratis. The 9 days performance is called Vritra. Side by side with this, there are, under this heading, a number of Soma-sacrifices extending over 2 nights, or 3 nights, 4 nights, or up to 12 nights, and so on. In the third class, we have the annual satras, and of these, the cow's walk is this type. Some satras, which come under this class, are described as extending over 1,000 years, and a discussion is found in sacrificial works as to whether the phrase 1,000 years signifies 1,000 real years or whether it stands for 1,000 days, but we may pass it over as unnecessary for our purposes. The annual satras are only important satras in this class, and to understand their nature, we must see what a shalaha means. The word literally denotes a group of 6 days, and is used to denote 6 days' performance in the sacrificial literature. It is employed as a unit to measure a month in the same way as we now use a week, a month being made up of 5. It, in turn, consists of daily sacrifices called Jatis, Go, and Ayus, the same 3 taken in reverse order. Every shalaha, therefore, begins and ends with a dochstoma. The shalaha is further distinguished according to an arrangement of stomas or songs sung at the Soma libations. An annual satra is in the main made up of a number of shalahas joined with certain special rites at the beginning, the middle, and the close of the satra. The central day of the satra stands by itself, dividing the satra to 2 equal halves, like the wings of a house. The rites in the latter half of the session, or after midday, are performed in an order which is the reverse of that followed in forming the ceremonies in the first half of the sacrifice. The model annual satra, the cow's walk, thus consists of the following parts. It can be seen from the above scheme that there are really a few sacrificial rites which are absolutely fixed and unchangeable in the yearly satra. The 2 atiratas, the introductory and the concluding, are the only parts that have any specialty about them. The rest of the days are all made up of abhiplava and prishtya shalahas, and thus constitute what may be called the elastic or variable part of the yearly satra. So if we want a cow's walk of 10 months, we have only to strike off 5 shalahas from parts marked 3 and 11 in the earlier screen. There's another modification of the above scheme, which, amongst other changes, they are all abhiplava instead of being a combination. while if all the shalahas are Kshatriya, along with some other changes, it becomes known as the above. All these modifications do not, however, touch the total number of 360 days. But there were sacrificers who adopted a lunar year of 354 days and therefore omitted 6 days from the above scheme, and their satra is shown here. In short, the object was to make the satra correspond with the year adopted, civil or lunar, as closely as possible. These points are not relevant to our purpose. Elsewhere, further details are given about various rites to be performed. The Aitreya Aranyaka describes one ceremony, while the others are described in the 4th book of the Aitreya Brahmana. The one shown is so called because the stoma to be chanted on the day is 24-fold. It is the real beginning of the satra, as the Mahavrata is its end. The Aitreya Brahmana says, "The Hotri pours forth the seed, and thus he makes the seed, which is poured forth, by means of the Mahavrata day, produce offspring, for seed, if effused every year, is productive." This explanation shows that, like the Prevayarga ceremony, the Mahavrata was intended to preserve the seed of the sacrifice in order that it might germinate or grow at the proper time. This is a sort of link between the dying and the coming year, and appropriately concluded the annual satra. It will be further seen that every annual satra had an Atiratra at each of its ends, and that the 10 days thereof formed an important concluding part of the satra. What we've noted is only a brief description, a mere outline of the scheme of the annual satras mentioned in sacrificial works, but it is sufficient for our purposes. We can see from it that a civil year of 360 days formed its basis, and the position of Vishuvain was of great importance inasmuch as the ceremonies after it were performed in reverse order. It has been shown elsewhere that important inferences can be drawn from the position of this midday regarding the calendar in use at the time when the scheme was settled. But we have now to consider times which preceded the settlement of the scheme, and for that purpose we must describe another set of Soma-sacrifices included under the general caste of satras. As is stated earlier, that side by side with the Vadashana there are Ahîna sacrifices of 2 nights, 3 nights, etc., up to 12 nights. But these sacrifices do not stop with the 12 nights performance. There are 13 nights, 14 nights, 15 nights, and so on up to 100 nights of sacrifice. But since the Ahîna has been defined to be a sacrifice extending over not more than 12 or less than 13 days, all the night sacrifices extending over a period longer than 12 nights are included in the 3rd class, that is, the satras. If we, however, disregard this artificial division, it can be found that along with the Ekâha, the Dadvashaya, the annual satras, there is a series of what are termed the night sacrifices, or satras, extending over a period of time of 2 to 100 nights, but not further. These night sacrifices, or Ratri satras, are mentioned in clear terms, and there is no ambiguity about their nature, number, or duration. The Tatriya Samhita, in describing them, often uses the word nights in plural, stating that so-and-so was the first to institute or to perceive so many nights, meaning so many nights sacrifice. According to the principle of division noted above, all night sacrifices of less than 13 nights durations will be called Ahîna, while those extending over a longer time, up to 100 nights, will come under satras. But as we noted, this is evidently an artificial division, and one who reads carefully the descriptions of these sacrifices cannot fail to be struck by the fact that we have here a series of night sacrifices from 2 to 100 nights, or if we include the Vritra in this series, we have practically a set of 100 nightly Soma-sacrifices, though according to the principal division adopted, some may fall under the head of Ahîna, and some under that of Satras. Now, an important question in connection with these Satras is why they alone should be designated as night sacrifices or night sessions, and why their numbers should be over 100. Or in other words, why there are no night satras of longer duration than 100 nights. We do have an answer to the first part of the question by asking us to believe that the word night is really used to denote a day in the denomination of these sacrifices. The word Vritra, according to this theory, means 2-day sacrifices, and Shataratra, 100 days sacrifice. This explanation appears very good at first sight, and as a matter of fact, it has been accepted by all writers on sacrificial ceremonies. In support of this, we may also cite the fact that the moon was the measure of time in ancient days. The night was then naturally more marked than the day, and instead of by saying so many days, men often spoke of so many nights, much in the same way as we now use the word fortnight. But this is no doubt good so far as it goes, but the question is why there should be no Soma sacrifice of a longer duration than 100 nights. And why a serious gap, is left in the series of Soma sacrifices after 100 nights Satra, until we come to the annual Satra of 360 days. By admitting that night means day, we have Soma sacrifices lasting from 1 to 100 days, and if so, where was the harm to complete the series until the yearly Satra of 360 days was reached? As far as seen, no writer on sacrificial ceremonies has attempted to answer this question satisfactorily. Of course, adopting the speculative manner of the Brahmanas, we might say that there are no Soma sacrifices longer than 100 nights duration because the life of a man cannot extend beyond 100 years. But such an explanation can never be regarded as satisfactory, and one group who got over the difficulty by interpreting night into day have practically left this latter question untouched, and therefore unsolved. In short, the case stands thusly. Sacrificial literature mentions a series of 99, or practically 100, Soma sacrifices, called the night sacrifices. But these do not form any part of the annual Satra, like the cow's walk, nor is any reason assigned for their separate existence, nor is their duration, which never exceeds 100 nights, ever accounted for. Neither the authors of the Brahmanas nor those of the Shratu Sutras, much less Sayana or Yaska, give us any clue of the solution of this question, and after explaining the word night as occurring in the names of the sacrifices as equal to day, they have allowed that these night sacrifices remain as an isolated group in the organized system of Soma sacrifice. Under these circumstances, it would no doubt appear presumptuous for anyone to suggest an explanation so many centuries after what may be called the age of the Satras. But the Arctic theory, which we have seen is supported by strong independent evidence, not only explains, but appropriately accounts for the original existence of this isolated series of 100 Soma sacrifices. And we will give views on this point in the next video. If you know anyone interested in this kind of content, please let them know. It sure helps us out a lot.